painting that we started in our Watercolor 201 class of these flowers. And if you'll look for part 1, you'll see where we painted up to this point. These are the colors that we'll be using today, and that is lemon yellow, ultramarine, phthalo blue, and Payne's gray, and a little bit of quinacridone magenta. And we will make these colors as we go along. So we have it to this point. I've done the background, I've done this little bud right here, which is our focal point. And now we're going to start working on this flower over here. I do have a photo reference that I'm using. We want to make these petals a little more on the violet side. This is actually a wonderful little mop brush made by Raphael. It's a 0, it's a soft aqua, and it's imitation squirrel, so it's very soft. And that's what we'll be using on these petals. You can either pre-wet the petal and drop the color in if you want a really soft effect, or you can just use a bit of your color and drop the color in. And I'm seeing some variations in this color, so we'll build this up as we go along. This is just the initial wash. I like to set down some color just so we know where we're going with our colors. It's kind of like a road map. So this is a fairly even wash. When we go back in, and that's actually a hard line there, we need to soften a bit. If you get a hard line like that, you can just go back in with your water and soften it. And we want some variation in these leaves. We want, they do have the veining in them, so we kind of want to give that indication. And we're way too purple up here, so let's push that back to the blue side. As you go along, you can just take your combinations of colors and tweak them one way or the other so that you end up with a color harmony. And oh, that's actually going to be our shadow right there, so we're going to go much darker with that. And this, I do not know why that leaf is so light there, so we'll go ahead and give that another wash of color. And we'll come over here. And usually when we're painting a flower or a floral or a botanical painting, it's best to skip around and don't paint the petal right next to the petal you just painted, because otherwise they'll blend together unless you want that look. And then of course that would be fine. So right now I'm just laying down the washes and just establishing what's called the local color. Actually, we'll go ahead and make up a little bit more of a violet color. And that's using ultramarine blue and quinacridone magenta. And we'll push it more to the purple side. This has a very dark edge back there. I do think it's important to do a value study when you start a painting. That seems to be very helpful in getting your darkest darks as dark as you need them to be. And I'm going to just bleed this in since these are all in the same color family. It really doesn't matter. This one's also going to be very dark. And it's best just to let your glazes dry in between. Let me pick that up. If you get a little place like that, just suck it up with a clean brush. And if you can't get your color dark enough, you can always add Payne's gray to those petals in the back because that will darken those petals and push them back. It's also a nice, if you mix that with the ultramarine, it makes a nice, and a little bit of the quinacridone magenta, it makes a nice shadow color. Okay, see, we push that one a little bit darker there. I like that better. Okay. And I think these centers are dark enough because I've already darkened those. Let me mop up a little bit of that with a thirsty brush so that we don't have a hard line there. Now I need to come back in here and do a unifying wash over this entire flower so that we don't have such a differentiation between the violet and the blue. So in order to do that, I will mix up a large mixture of our medium blue, which is actually mimics a cobalt blue. And the way we get that is we mix ultramarine and phthalo blue, and that puts us right in the middle between the warm blue and the cool blue, and that gives us a cobalt blue. And then we'll test it on here and see, that is what I call it, a cornflower, but it's actually cobalt blue. So I'm going to go over everything with that wash and see what happens with this very soft brush. If you use a really soft imitation squirrel brush, you won't lift the underlying paint. If you use this hard synthetic, you may well lift the underlying paint, particularly on these little watercolor boards, because they lift very easily. Okay. All right, so we're going over everything with this, with the exception of the, I may go around this a little bit. Kind of want to keep that really dark and purpley though, so let's see what happens if we do that. We'll just see what happens if we go over everything and see if we don't get that nicer, softer look we're looking for. And this is just clear water right here because I don't want that to darken. Alrighty then, go over this with that beautiful, beautiful blue color. I'm even going to push it into the background a little bit bluer. Always painting in the direction of the form of the subject that we're painting. So these petals, we always paint in the same direction that they grow, or that they, that's looking better, I like that. Okay. Just going over everything. And in our next class, when our class finishes this project, we will discuss unifying washes and how useful they are. These are all shadows here, so they're going to be really pretty. And our painting will have much more harmony from doing this. It's actually looking quite nice. Let's do the same up here for this flower. Get that a little bit bluer. So the petals that had the underpainting of blue will just be bluer, and the petals that had the underpainting that was more violet will just be more of a violet blue. They all will blend much better together from doing this. And even the light, if you have a lighter petal, it will still be lighter than everything else. And if you have a darker petal, it will still be darker. But you'll get this effect which is really a nice effect, I think. You don't want to do your unifying washes until almost the end, because they'll just be lost if you do them too soon. Okay, and we will go back into this very dark area, right in here, and right at the edge there, with that darker color. And I did the background first on this painting because I wanted to use this salt effect. That's what you're seeing here. And it does take a very long time for it to dry. Now we're going to go down to a smaller brush with our real dark and work up in here a little bit in this bud. See what happens. We fiddle around in there a little bit. Don't want that dark to be too prominent, but I do want that indication there. And down here in the background, we have a little bud there. We also have a little bud back here that's just out of focus because it's in the background. Okay, I'm happy with that. So let's let this dry and then we will see where we are, and I'll be back shortly.